Hello and welcome to this week's A Photographic Life and the second recording that came from our A Photographic Life Live 2025 event, which we held at Oxford Brookes University. This time, it's a very, very free-flowing, I think entertaining, occasionally I think funny conversation with photographer and filmmaker Chris Floyd. Over to you, Chris. Even if you're not sure if we've started. Okay, so Chris Floyd, welcome to A Photographic Life Live.
Oh, I thought there was going to be I thought it sounded like you were drawing breath to say to put something else.
You
in
wanted
there.
more, didn't you?
I was expecting more.
Yeah, well, don't you see expectations or unrealistic?
Thank you for having me.
That's all right, but unrealistic expectations are always the downfall of the photographer.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
So, you and I, you've contributed to the podcast a couple of times.
Yes.
Once in a joint conversation with James and Jake around the 90s.
Yeah.
And your What Does Photography Mean to You? Yes. Many episodes ago. But we have never had a one-to-one conversation about photography.
No.
So I think it's about time we did.
Here we are. Live.
The one thing I really wanted to talk to you about, and I think it's a really important thing, is you are a people person. Even when we were chatting earlier, you were reeling off a list of names of people you know and people you've seen and people you're talking to and who you're reaching out to. And yeah, when you did the What Does Photography Mean to You, you spoke about the absolute fear before taking a photograph.
Yeah.
Is it still there?
It's always there. It never goes away. It's a form of stage fright.
When did it start?
As in
the stage
in
fright?
My life, or on any given
the stage
day?
Fright. Or was there a point at which you thought, hang on a minute, the stakes are getting higher here?
No, it's always been like that, I think. It's always been, there's a sort of, do I have to do this today? Feeling that comes over me around about the time I first gained consciousness in the morning. And then it grows and grows and grows in like a knot in your stomach, right up until I would say a point somewhere in the session, in the shoot, where the discordant starts to feel more harmonic. So what I mean by that is the composition's wrong, the light's wrong, the person's in the wrong place, I'm talking rubbish, that they think I'm an idiot, all this stuff, because really what you're trying to do is get a connection with them. You want them to like you, probably.
But when you photograph a celebrity, and we've both done it, you meet them, don't you? And a lot of the time it's for the first time.
Yeah.
You inherit...
And most of the time it's for the last time.
Yeah, well, there isn't. Although, I'm sure you've had it. I've been asked to re-photograph the same celebrity a few times, and it's always the one I don't want to re-photograph.
Yeah.
It's always the hardest one to do for different reasons. But when you meet them for the first time, you know that you've got to look them in the eye and they've got to trust you or like you, or at least believe in you.
Yeah.
So if you're going in there with your absolute ball of insecurity, you must be overcoming that. And I think that's...
Must be able to what?
You must be able to overcome that, or at least put on a face.
Yeah, it's like being a swan. It's all the work's going on beneath the surface, and on the surface you're just gliding around as if you haven't got a care in the world, and you're masking all your... I had an assistant for a very long time called Berit, who's German, and she was your quintessential Berlin German art person. Only ever wore black, never smiled, but was also really funny in a really dry way.
I was going to say in a dry way, yeah.
And we developed, because we worked together for so long, we developed a sort of language that only we understood in the company of other people. And because nowadays, quite often, I'm shooting directly into a laptop, so I've got cable, the camera's tethered to the laptop. and the cable's 10 meters long, and Berit will be over there somewhere with the laptop on a stand or a table behind me. So I can't really see what she's seeing, what the pictures look like. So I would say, how is it? How's it looking, Berit, as we're shooting? And she would go, move that, maybe you want to think about moving that light over there 4 inches to the right, or go higher, higher up, or open your half a stop under, or all these things, adjust this, adjust that. And then there will come, if we got to a point where I said, how is it, Berit? And Berit said, I don't hate it. Then that for me was like, we are peaking here. This is
the things are going well.
Things are going really well. So that's it. It's just when I get to the point where Berit doesn't hate it, it's the point where the stage fright and anxiety dissipates, and you start to feel like you've come out into the sun.
But pre-Berit, when you weren't working tethered, and you just had a camera.
Ooh.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Because, I always used to think my greatest sort of sense of achievement was that the film had actually come out. It was when I arrived at the darkroom and I picked up the film from the lab, and I would go,
yeah.
Did it come out?
Is there anything on it?
And they're like, yeah, of course it came out.
Yeah, is there anything on it?
Yeah, is there anything on it? I've actually got contact sheets.
Yeah.
That's where I was super excited.
Yes.
But that insecurity up until that point is
and then
really
the next
hard.
one after has it come out? The next one after that is, are there any pictures where the person's got their eyes open?
Yeah, yeah.
And are there any pictures where the person's got their eyes open and it's in focus?
Oh, focus.
Yeah.
In the days of manual focus.
Yeah, all of that.
But you still survived.
Yeah, but it's not really the technicalities. It's about whether the pictures, whether you get a feeling from the picture. That's the anxiety. Is I can do a competent picture anytime. I know I can do it, in the same way that you can do beans on toast, and that's competent nutrition, or arguably competent nutrition. But can you make a meal that people say, wow, that was a fantastic meal, I'd like to eat that again?
But when you're working as a portrait photographer, so much of that is about what you're bringing, what the photographer brings.
Yeah.
Because, as I was saying, when you photograph a celebrity, I always used to find the hardest part was that I was inheriting every photographer that had photographed them before. And you know what it's like. They turn up and they go, they think they know what we want.
Yeah.
And I'd always sort of say, can you try and forget everything that's gone before?
Yeah. I mean, that's where photographers are a trope, aren't they? In the same way that accountants are boring and computer scientists are geeks and, whatever else you can think of. Photographers are, we come with our own baggage of what people think we are. We either chased Princess Diana to her death in a tunnel in Paris, or we're perverts, or we're nerds, or we're not necessarily each of us an individual with their own set of characteristics and ways of pursuing things. And it's you arrive, as you say, really as a kind of composite of all the other photographers they've met before.
Yeah, and then the key is to try and get them to understand
Yeah.
that you're not.
Yeah,
the same
I'm not like
photographer.
the other boys.
No, which has been said. But I think that in itself is a huge challenge. And so you've got to be gregarious, and you've got to be sociable, and you've got to instill confidence, however you might feel.
Yeah. So I have to be another person. I definitely have an alter ego, and I don't really like that guy.
You don't like that Chris Floyd?
He's an absolute idiot. Because he's everything I'm not.
Yeah.
I am introverted. I am quite, some of my family are here today. They can tell you that at home I can sit at the dinner table and not say a word. Because I can't think of anything to say. And I'm all of those things, but then when I go and do my job, I have to become this other person. I have to be, hey, come in, how are you? Would you like a cup of tea? What have you been up to? I have to ask them questions that elicit answers that I actually don't really care about, because the real me is quite a withdrawn person. So I have to be this other person, and then sometimes he makes me cringe, and but that's what I have to do. And I think it's also why I probably entered into this line of work in my life, because if I didn't do this, I wouldn't meet anyone, I wouldn't have any friends, I wouldn't go out, I'd be quite a withdrawn person. So
there's a touch of the psychiatrist's couch beginning to come through here, isn't there?
Yeah. It's a strange job in that you ultimately are trying to engender intimacy, the end result, the picture, from a situation that is artificial. And I'm also really hyper aware of that while I'm doing it. I'm aware of how fake all this is. There's lights and there's makeup, and maybe they're not even wearing their own clothes, and it's all fake. But once you're inside the four walls of that frame, you want the viewer to believe that this is how it always has been. This is a form of reality.
There's a kind of, you started off doing a lot of music photography, and I've always thought that there's kind of a thing at that time, 80s, 90s, that if you couldn't play an instrument, you'd be the photographer.
Yeah.
Because it was actually kind of similar.
Yeah.
You play a role, but you also get a little bit of adulation, and you can have that lifestyle.
Yeah. I think that I loved the idea of going on tour when I was younger with a band, because I think the connection between photography and music especially is that musicians have a camaraderie. They have their own language, music. They have their camaraderie. They need each other to produce their products. No one wants to buy a record really of just drums, do they? So the drummer needs a bass player, and the bass player needs a guitarist, and the guitarist needs a singer, and so on. And it's the way that the end product is the sum of all those parts and greater. And photography is a real lone wolf pursuit, and I think it's very attractive for photographers to go into a world that's the complete opposite of their own, which is a world of camaraderie and collaboration. And to be able to document that as an outsider is quite an attractive and intoxicating thing to do.
When you're on tour, particularly I suppose when you're on tour with the Verve and all of that kind of stuff, you're very much in the corner, trying not to, or maybe not, maybe you're part of the party. Yeah. We've had that discussion before. But you're very much in the corner kind of observing what's going on.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're working as a portrait photographer, then we're controlling it and we're actually trying to make it happen. They're very, very different.
Yeah, totally different.
Different things. Which one felt most comfortable?
Actually, I think doing portraiture, I feel like a bit of you feel actually a bit like a pilot fish. Is it pilot fish that swim in the wake of?
I'm not good on fish.
Of things like sharks and feed off the sharks' crumbs.
Okay.
You feel also that you're quite parasitical as well. I think going on after a while, I really began to feel like that. Actually, Simon Jones, who was the bass player in the Verve, said the best line ever about this. When I was with them, we were the last stop on the tour, which was San Francisco, having gone right across America from Atlanta. And
at the peak of their success.
Yeah. And we were in San Francisco, which obviously is the birthplace of sort of hippiedom. And this guy comes to see them, this very famous 60s poster artist who'd done lots of things for people like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane, all those psychedelic 60s posters. And this guy comes in and he's like massive beard, white hippie beard. And he was going to design a poster for them to commemorate this gig they did in San Francisco. And then as he was leaving, he turned around and said, if I need some photos of you guys to work from, can I get some? And then Richard Ashcroft, the singer, sort of pointed at me and went, yeah, get them from him. He's on the road with us, taking our souls away from us every night. And then Simon, the bass player, said, yeah, but we get them back on contact sheets. So yeah, that parasitic feeling. But
so that doesn't feel comfortable for you.
No, you feel sort of, and you have, and then it starts to inhibit the way you behave. You become incredibly self-conscious, and some people have no problem with that, can do that, but I found that doing portraiture, where it's one-on-one or one-on however many, but you're in command. Really, it's your territory, the studio or the location. You know, they've come to you.
So do you like that sense of control?
Yeah, actually, I find that that's really the only time I can really take pictures in a way that feels quite free. Funnily enough, you know, I can't do street. I mean, you know, I'm kind of amazed at people that can do street photography and things like that, because, you know, all that would be going through my head if I went out and tried to take pictures in the street. All that would be going through my head would be that everyone here thinks I'm a paedophile. That's what I would be thinking. That's what I would be thinking that they were thinking. You know, because the irony is that if you go out into the street now with a camera, like a proper camera, you are looked at and regarded with suspicion in a way that you're not if you did the same scene with a phone.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Bailey famously said that, didn't he? He went through the whole line of formats.
Right.
And basically said, you know, if you start with a large format, the person knows they're going to be photographed. You're going to get a certain kind of picture, and Well, maybe it was his reasoning for using cheap, rubbish Olympus cameras.
Well, I did some architectural photography in the East End a few years ago on a 5.4 plate camera, and I had a ladder as well. You know, like 5-step ladder.
Well, that's proper photography.
Yeah, and I was up the ladder with my plate camera with a dark cloth over my head, and someone called the police, and the police came, and she said, under the such and such Prevention of Terrorism Act 2000 blah, I'm asking you, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm photographing this building, and she was like, why? And I said, I got into the thing about, it's not against the law to take pictures in a public place, because I was on a public street. Mm. He says, yes, I know, but I'm authorised to ask you why you're doing it and everything. And I said, well,
you didn't have an artistic why.
I did have an artistic why.
What was your artistic why?
Was that the building in front that I was photographing, was where my great-grandparents had been killed by a V2 rocket.
Wow.
So I was.
So that's a very good why.
Yeah.
And how did she take the why?
Then she was just really interested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then she just wanted. I was doing V2 impact sites around London, and then I went to The Hague in Holland and photographed the launch, because the thing about the Germans is they keep really good records, and so there were all the German army launch information had survived, and there was a group of men in The Hague who kind of collated all this information onto a website, so you could. It had the launch date and the launch time of a V2, and you knew that it took about 6 minutes to get from The Hague to London, and then you could see the impact in London literally 6 minutes later. So you knew that rocket that landed there had been launched from this place here. So I did the impact sites and the launch sites and put the two pictures together as diptychs.
That approach to a person...
That's not portraiture.
Well, no, it's a form of portraiture, but it does lead you on to the thing that most people, I think, would know you for your commissioned work, rather than a very personal project like that. But how did that come about? Well,
my grandparents were killed by the last one.
No, I know, apart from that. What made you think, actually, I'd like to make, step away from this work to this work?
I think it's the sliding doors element of it all, and the place and time, and just...
that personal history.
Actually, I'll tell you why. Yeah, because my mum should have been there and wasn't.
Right.
She was 3 years old at the time, and she should have been staying with them. It was my great-grandparents, her grandparents. So my mum usually stayed with them on a Monday night, because my grandmother, her mother, worked worked at nights on Mondays, and but for some reason her mum had swapped her shift with someone else, and had the night off. So my mum didn't go to her grandparents, and then the rocket hit the building at about 7 on the following morning. So she would have been there.
That's the basis for a really true personal project.
Yeah.
It? You know, but it means something. So the world of commissioned photography has changed dramatically over the years we've been doing it. How do you find your approach has changed to it now? Or are you still the same? Or are you thinking actually that personal work is starting to become more important?
It hasn't really changed in the way that I do it, but I just, having done it now for a very long time, I've got what I think of as a big quiver of arrows on my back, and that each arrow represents maybe a technique, a way of doing things, because they're almost, I can't really think of any. The last time I was faced with a situation where I didn't know what to do, because you think, well, okay, you have all these techniques and things that you've developed over the years, ways of lighting things, or the way you approach things, or your composition, or all these things, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, this happened. I've been here before. You've only got 5 minutes, or it's raining, or it's very dark, or whatever it might be, and you've got a way of dealing with it and making a picture that is worth bothering with. That you can come out of and go,
there's a reason for it to exist.
Yeah, there's a reason why. Yeah, reason for it to exist.
But also, I think what I'm sort of most interested in is this thing of how we deal with people, because I think that's where a lot of people struggle with portrait photography, because you've got to be, as you were saying, however anxious you are, you put on the other face.
Yeah, you put on the brave face.
Yeah, you overcome it. Where a lot of people can't actually get to that point. But you come across all sorts of different personalities. So you've got to be good at working out, hang on a second, how kind of ballsy can I be with this person, or how gentle, or whatever. And of course, the most famous story you've got up your sleeve is the McCartney story of that, which I think is a perfect example of that confidence, but it's a confidence that is kind of in opposition to how you describe yourself.
Well, with him, because I'm such a super fan, and I know a lot about him from just biographies and things, and just absorbing it over the years, and not only that, but also the sort of history of, he's someone who's been photographed and documented since he was 20, and that's a really long time. And
he's a photographer.
And he's a photographer. He's a photographer now. Yeah. And he was married to a photographer.
Of course, yeah.
So he has a kind of empathy, possibly, with photographers. However, my big thing was that I didn't think that there'd been a good picture of him for quite a long time, considering how many great pictures there are of him from the 60s, especially the 60s, really. And also, there was a side of him that I really wanted to capture, which was, having read so much about him, was his the sheer determination and ambitiousness. And how it's masked by his maca personality, and that's like a kind of cloak that he wears, and underneath it is this really, really kind of ruthless, not ruthless in a nasty way, but in a, he in that, if you've seen Get Back, that thing, well, there's a bit in it where he says, almost talking to himself, have to achieve something every day. He sort of says it, after they'd had a day of sort of noodling around, not really doing anything. He says, we've got to do something every day. We have to achieve something every day. It was almost like it had been put in him by his dad as a kid,
Well, we are all kind of the results of our parents. Whatever. But anyway, before we go too kind of further into that, so why I think this is interesting is because, as I said, how you approach McCartney is the complete opposite to how you then talk about how you approach portraits to me.
Yeah.
So you're in the studio with your hero.
Yes, so we're in a arena in the London Arena, which has been demolished now. But it was, he was rehearsing there, and we just had the whole arena floor, this massive floor with nothing on it, and we just built a studio there, like put up a colour backdrop and everything, and I kind of had the picture in my head, because quite often I don't have the picture in my head. We'll just go there and we'll see whatever happens is what happens. But with him, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted. And getting him there was like a wrestling match, sort of a conversational and psychological wrestling match. Because back to the thing earlier about how photographers, I said earlier, photographers are a trope. With someone like him, you've got a person who's met, a million of me, and I've never met any of him. And so the seesaw of the power imbalance is really extreme in that, he's got all the power. He doesn't care about this. It's not important for him. It's another half hour photographic session. He's done a million of them in his life. It's a chore. But for me, it's something that all I did was think about it from the moment I got called by the magazine and asked to do it, which was probably a couple of weeks earlier. So all I did was think about it for 2 weeks, day and night. And I can tell you that he didn't think about it even while he was doing it, never mind before or after. So, there's that to deal with. And so you've got to kind of wrestle them into caring as much as you do, or even a little bit as much as you do. And, it's almost like he was a child who was just wanted to go, just do his Macca thing and just phone it in, basically. And it's almost like a kid who's just wandering over here, and you want them to go over here, and I just had to keep picking it up and putting him back. Pick him up, put him back, pick him up, put him back. And, and after like 20 minutes of this, he's getting really annoyed with me picking up and going, no, not that way, this way, this way, this way. And, and then it all came down to him saying, what's the matter? Don't you like a bit of whimsy? Which is so Paul McCartney, that word whimsical. You think of like Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Yeah. Or Obla Di Obla Da. That is your method of whimsy. Any of the worst songs. Yeah. Don't you like a bit of whimsy? And I said, not when there's a war on, Paul. And because we were in the middle of the Iraq Gulf War of 2003. And in my head, it was supposed to be funny or witty. It was supposed to be like a sort of Captain Mannering. It was a whimsical response to a question about whimsy. And in my head, I was a sort of Captain Mannering, Dad's Army kind of. That's how I thought I was saying it.
Don't give him your name.
Yeah, not when there's a war on, Paul. Yeah. Like that. And he just looked at me like absolutely furious. But that's this is it. It's that one there. So, for those of you listening at home, I'm now holding up the contact sheet of that roll of film. That's it, And I had a Mamiya RZ camera, 6.7 camera on a tripod, medium format, and it's here, and I'm looking down. And I didn't even look down because I could see his face, and I could feel. I knew where the focus was, and I just sort of went click and then wound it on, did a quick check, and it was in focus. Click, took 2 frames. And then there was such a sort of tenseness in the air. I don't know why, I just said to him, now just close your eyes. Let's have a palate cleanser, was what I said. Let's have a sorbet course. And he closed his eyes, and there's like 2 or 3 more frames of him with his eyes closed. And I couldn't think of anything to say after that. I was like, okay, thanks very much. I've got it. And that was it.
The picture that came out of that reminded me of kind of like how Avedon would have.
Yeah, that's what that was the thing earlier in the. Have you said that deliberately because my Avedon thing?
No, everything I do is completely. So
earlier on, I had said he said, "What sort of picture are you looking for today?" And I said to him, you know those Avedon pictures of you from
the White Album?
67, 68? Yeah. But I didn't say the White Album. I just said, you know, the Avedon pictures of you. Avedon made them into like a comp, like into a four.
Yeah.
The sort of, and people call it the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, because the way he sort of comped them. He's printed.
Well, he was into that kind of blurry art,
he did it
shoulder
with,
thing.
was it with Twiggy?
I think it was with Twiggy.
Or no, Audrey Hepburn, isn't it? With that,
yes.
With the thing.
Yeah, kind of
which
surrealist.
Looks like a sort of
thing.
Medusa thing.
Yeah.
So was what I had in my head. I said, you know the way the Avedon pictures of you, and he just went. No, I can't remember those.
It's like how to make you feel small.
Yeah. And I just laughed. I remember laughing and just saying, I can't believe that you can't remember a picture of yourself. That is one of the most iconic pictures of you ever.
Yeah.
He said, we did a lot of photo sessions, you know.
But you know, it's funny you did that, because for me that story and the way you approached it, as I said, is the opposite to what you were saying before. I mean, that's somebody who's extremely confident and knows that they've got to come out of it with a picture. But also, you had done the research. You really knew. You were trying to get to a point of who he really was. And I've met him a few times.
Yeah.
And stuff. And that's the Paul I know.
Yeah.
From that.
So that's yes, it's because I've done the research really, but just by osmosis, just by being a fan and knowing.
Yeah. Which is the best kind of research in many ways.
There was another funny thing actually that day that actually someone, Dave Brolin, who was the photo editor who commissioned me, who he reminded me recently that I'd completely forgotten all about it. It was also the same month that the congestion charge began in London, and I knew that Paul had a house in St John's Wood, and that we were now all the way over in East London. So to get from his house in St John's Wood to this arena, he would have gone right through the congestion zone, and it was only about like the second week of it. And I said to him, how long are you here? How long are you rehearsing in this arena for? And he said, we're here for 2 weeks. And I said, so you've got to pay the congestion charge every day to get here. And he said, yeah, what? He was like, what? And I said, the congestion charge. And he goes, oh, yeah. So you've got to pay that every day to come to work now.
Yeah.
And
which is a big financial consideration for Paul McCartney. Yeah.
And he went, oh, yeah. I said, oh, that must be a big hit on the rehearsal costs. And obviously being ironic about it, but he took me completely at face value, and he said, well, actually, it's fine because I live in the zone. I get the discount. I think it's 90%. So,
but it's funny because always the situation I had with a musician was with David Bowie, who was so the opposite to that, and was so nice and so gentle and would do anything, and was really obviously playing a game.
Yeah.
But he was very kind of, oh, yes, my name's David.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're David Bowie.
Yeah.
You're not just David, And he said, oh, there was this friend of mine I used to have in Berlin. I think you may know Iggy. And we're like, We're like, well, yeah. And Jake, Jessam and I were there, in absolute awe of the whole situation. But I think it really does show how you have to respond to different people in different ways.
Yeah.
And that in itself is an art, but it is an art that could be learnt. So I think quite often portrait photographers or people starting to make portraits will say, oh, I can't do that. I'm this person, the introvert. But actually you can overcome it.
Well, the one thing that I have learnt to do, I think also this is something to do with my upbringing, is that I went to a whole mix of different schools. So I went to private schools and state schools, and I was kind of around all types of people through my childhood. And as I've got older, I'm really not intimidated by any class of person. Because that's the other thing. You meet in this job, you meet all sorts of folk. And, I've done, Prince William and Kate, and I've done, last couple of weeks ago, I was out with a load of ex-Royal Marines on a Border Force drug patrol boat in the Solent, and they're
Did they
all
pick
just
you
like
up, or
Marines
were
from Plymouth.
you photographing them?
Sorry?
Did they pick you up, or were you?
Oh, I went out to photograph them. So you're out with, and they're all like from Plymouth, and they all, they've all got that Plymouth accent. And they're in the Marines, so I know how to talk to them, and I can talk to Prince William, and I know I've done some prime ministers, and I can do that, and then I can do coal miners. You sort of have to be a bit of a shapeshifter, but if you've got that self-awareness that I do, you just kind of know how to slip into the kind of person you have to be to get along in each different world that you go into.
But you're right, because that is so life experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
As you go along, because I'm sure when you first started, the picture you often show of Noel Gallagher at the beginning, you were right at the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
Then. So
I went
suddenly
to school with, when I went to state school, I went to school with people like Noel.
Yeah.
And when I went to a private school, I went to school with people like Prince William. It was, that's where I think I got all that from.
Yeah, but that's what's so important. I mean, I'm from South London, but I worked at Tatler.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like I can get down to I'm going to drop something at the skip. I can go to the front of the queue because I just lean out the window and go, all right, Chief. And I'm there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've been in a lift with Princess Diana.
Yeah.
So you get used to that, those skills.
I've got a friend, Miles, who was a designer at Tatler much later than you, after you, and he's from Hackney. And he'd been freelancing at Tatler for a while, and I hadn't seen him. And I said, how's it going at Tatler? And he goes, yeah, it's all right. And I said, what's it like? He goes, it's just a load of posh women doing a magazine.
I'm not going to say anything to that. but yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that too much. But obviously, you could read my book.
Yes,
and you
I've
could
got
find
your
out
book.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's an excellent book, actually.
Thank you very much. So where are we now with portrait photography when so much is controlled, celebrity portrait photography, so much is controlled by the PRs?
Yeah.
They're even choosing the photographers now. And then you've got celebrities who've got their own content creators and all of that nonsense.
I don't think it's in a great place, if I'm honest. I think and a lot of that is because of how it's viewed.
Yeah.
It's now viewed on this and a phone. And the irony is that we shoot pictures now with better and better and better, higher and higher quality cameras. Cameras that can produce a print that's, 10 foot high, with no problem whatsoever. And yet we are viewing those pictures on smaller and smaller viewing formats, and backlit as well.
Backlit, I think, is the big thing that people don't realise, that difference between the light on a print or the light behind.
Yeah, the difference between a screen and a print. And it's a shame because, there's a book, that well-pressed photo book, it's called Things As They Are. Mm-hmm. It's about 30 years ago it was done. And it is just a whole book of images that won World Press Photo Awards, but reproduced as they were in the magazines they were published in at the time. So it's just the magazine spreads. And I just really, really miss well-designed pages with typography and negative space and things like that. I miss all of that. And I also miss the hierarchy that comes from putting things in a printed format, a hierarchy of information and imagery where the double page spread, or the cover, the double page spread, the turn page, the page after that, whatever that's called. And also, because when you view things now on a phone, it's just it's a sort of democratic scroll of just everything is just, there's no hierarchy, you just scroll and it's all the same size. But when you look at a really fantastic double page spread and you realize that someone chose that and said that is the story, that's the picture that leads us into the story, and there it is, and then you turn the page and there's this page here with a single page, and how it creates a sort of through an arc that takes you through a story, which, if you're talking about magazines, is accompanied by text. and writing.
But it's interesting you say, because I've not thought about this for years, but when I used to design magazines, your headline, then that first piece of text is called the A matter.
Yeah.
And then it's B, C, D, quote, caption. When you were working your way through it, you wouldn't say, "Oh, can I have an introduction?" You say, "What's the A matter?"
Yeah.
Because that hierarchy was actually a physical thing as well. But also, of course, there was a hierarchy to the magazine as you put it together.
Yeah.
So you would be thinking about the next 8 pages after those 4 pages or that 6 pages. So you were constantly doing that. But then as a photographer, you were also shooting to that.
Yeah.
Because you were hoping to get a DPS, a double page spread, and you were thinking about the gutter. And there was a lot more there.
I mean, to this day, I am incapable of putting someone's head in the middle of the frame because of the gutter.
Well, it's good to hear.
I mean, if you look at my pictures, people are on the left, they're on the right, then they're almost never in the middle.
So you're constantly leaving space for text.
Yeah, and I'm leaving space for text. Yeah, that's the other thing. Is I'm kind of conditioned to leave space for text, leave space for a headline,
But you're still getting commissioned by magazines, or is it mainly now for brands?
No, I'm still getting commissioned by magazines, but there's just not many of them.
No.
But it is nice. It is still nice to be commissioned, because that's also the thing that you can talk about. That's the thing that people want to know. Also, what have you been up to? People say that to you. What have you been up to? They don't really care if you say, "Oh, I did a wedding." But what they do care about is if you say, "Oh, I just photographed something for this magazine."
Well, that's where our stories come from.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it? That's the kind of conflict photographer's equivalent.
Yeah.
As our, I don't know, 24 Hours with Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be.
So the stories, because without that, I don't have any stories. So it's like you need a pipeline of fresh stories to tell. But I can't keep telling that Paul McCartney one for the rest of my life.
Well, no, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but then you kept going on about your kind of ball of insecurity, and then I thought, well, I'm going to bring up the McCartney story because it shows a different side.
It's the fear that what you're going to produce is substandard or just mediocre, just.
But you're setting those standards, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So you know what it's like nowadays. You could do a picture, it's really substandard, and someone goes, "Ah, it's great."
Yeah.
But you've got to have your own values. You've got to set your own bar.
Yeah. And quite often, what happens quite often actually, you get commissioned off the back of someone else's disappointment. So what I mean by that is someone calls you up and they say, "Oh, I saw that thing you did in such and such magazine last month. We really love that. Would you like to go and do X, Y, Z for us?" And you say, "Yeah, thanks very much." And then you go and do X, Y, Z for them. But what they don't realise is the thing that they loved that you did last month, the people that commissioned you to do that were disappointed in it because it wasn't like the thing you did the month before that they liked, that they think. So I'm always I'm always working on the back of someone else's disappointment, is how I see it. And then they're disappointed because it isn't like that. And then these people commission you because they loved this, but don't realise that these people were disappointed by it. So it's a question of balancing disappointments and inspirations.
I thought you were going to say they say, "Oh, we really love that," and then they give you something completely different that's got no connection with it whatsoever.
Well, that can happen as well.
Yeah, which I think happens more often than not. We love your picture of Beyonce. Do you want to do Billy Bragg?
Yeah.
And you're like,
they both begin with a B.
That's about it. Yeah. And I think that's probably why they came to my head first. I'm a person of simple thought. So where does it go? Where does this kind of work, which has been your career primarily, where does it go?
Well, I don't know where it goes. I don't know where it doesn't really have a commercial. When I started in the 90s, it was really possible to do editorial work. Because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for magazines. I didn't really, I've done lots of commercial work as well, but that is great to do because it pays better. But it's a bit soul destroying doing it, in that you're much more working to a very tight brief, and you're really there just to deliver the exact thing that they've drawn on the plans. Almost like building a house exactly as it is on the plans. When you do editorial work, you're really much freer, and you can sort of, the parameters are much looser about how you go about it and all of that. And that way of earning a living is really, died, more or less, dying/died. I mean, I was talking to someone the other night, actually, about how upsetting it can be to get continuously better at your craft whilst you are working within a declining industry. And that's the real heartbreak of it, is I do feel that I continue to get better and more competent and more capable as I get older. And yet I'm in an industry where the need for it is declining, and it eventually is dying off. And that's really heartbreaking.
Well, do you know what? I think that's the perfect place to end a podcast.
Yeah.
This
is the final episode.
This is the final episode. You finally brought us to our knees. Chris, as always, it's a joy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Chris, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that one. Also, if you enjoyed these live conversations, don't forget to go back to last week for Alice Tomlinson's, just in case you missed that one. And we've got Dr. Michael Pritchard coming up next week, just before Christmas. Anyway, that's about it from me this week. Take care.